And we are just, as I speak, saying goodbye to Oceana, who has left Southampton for pastures new in Greece.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, big changes in the cruise industry.
Wow. Oh, no, definitely. That's an exciting profession.
Certainly is. Never a dull moment.
I can certainly imagine that. Great. So, Mary Sue, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Connecticut.
Oh, nice. And what you do?
Director of Customer Experience for Stanley Access Technologies, which is a division of Stanley Black & Decker.
For Black & Decker?
Stanley Black & Decker, yeah. But it's a division. I work for a division of Stanley Black & Decker, which is the automatic doors division.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah, we had someone, I think, from Mexico, Black & Decker Mexico was one of our participants.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know, and we had people. We get some regular people coming, and Shane delivers such good stuff. So, you know, and you'll see as these webinars go, they're not really webinars. They're more, Shane gives over some great content, and then he really does a great job in engaging everybody to get their ideas. So it's more of like I'd say more like a round table type of a webinar. So, there's Ruth. Okay. Great. LaTanya, you're trying to get in here. I see she's trying to get in here. Kelly, okay, she renamed herself. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
Thank God, doing fabulous. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right, where are you calling in from?
We are near Chicago. I'm with my coworker, Jen Rodriguez.
Oh, very nice. Welcome to both of you. And what you guys do?
So we both work for a laboratory, and Jen works in HR, and I am the customer service manager.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so I'm glad that you came, and you'll see we have a lot. We're working on creating a hub, so all the past webinars and stuff and discussions you'll be able to join, to be able to see. So you'll see Shane has just amazing stuff, and we have some tremendous webinars and roundtables and virtual summits and content for you all that's going to be coming up here. Charles, welcome. Okay, he's frozen there. Charles, he was here last time. Welcome, Charles. Okay, we have over here,
no, he's muted.
Oh, he's muted. You can go ahead and unmute if you'd like there, Charles, and say hello to us when you're ready.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, he's back. He's back from the last time, so I'm glad that you have a return visitor to us, and hopefully you'll enjoy this. Last time he was on the round table, I believe, and so this is a little different setup, but I think you'll get a lot out of this here. And we have Raphael. Welcome, Raphael. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, Abraham. Yeah, I'm good. I'm from Nigeria.
All right. Well, welcome. We have our world audience, our world family here. We'll say not more than an audience. You guys are family. So, we're all in this life together here. So, what do you do over there? What company are you with, and what you do? Raphael?
Okay. Yeah, I manage a company into environmental management. I'm an environmental consultant. So I have reasons to manage clients, and way back before now, I've had to deal with customers in the banking sector and then the travel sector. So I've been in the industry as well for quite some time as well.
Oh, wonderful! Well, we're glad to have you here, and we have Julian here. We have a new person here. Julian, how you doing? Okay. All right. Okay, maybe he hasn't got it together yet. When you get together, you can send in, say hello to us here. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna bring Shane on. I'm Abraham Van Nismach, and I am the owner and partner for the Customer Service Professional Network, and my job is to bring people like Shane to you. I want to deliver you value so you can go out and make the world a wonderful place to do business with. That's what we're here to do. And so, Shane, without further ado, Shane, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Great. Thanks, guys. Hey, well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening for some of you. Thanks for taking some time to come and join us and talk a little bit about, obviously, CX. Heard a lot of customer experience responsibilities in some of those introductions, and obviously know a couple of you. I'm excited today. We're going to talk, we're going to kick off what we're calling a Culture Hacker series. Culture Hacker is my book that's been out for a couple of years now, and it was really written with the idea of understanding the impact that culture plays in delivering great customer experience. What we're going to focus on today is the title kind of suggests, is why leadership and culture is so critical to that, and we're going to kind of connect some dots, hopefully, with everybody today. But just to kind of a little bit about my background, I started out in hospitality and have really remained in and out of hospitality for about 25 plus years. I was with the Ritz-Carlton, started my own business. We've worked with a lot of different hospitality brands, but then have sort of gone on in consulting on customer experience, BMW, the NBA, Westfield, and have really started to kind of focus in on the part that people play in delivering great customer experience. And that's sort of our work and our research that has culminated over the years, as I said, came out in this book called Culture Hacker, which was recognizing certain elements or certain moments in an employee's journey that were critical to their overall well-being and feelings about what they did and who they did it for. So I wanted to kind of give you that because, again, my background in hospitality certainly played a part and still plays a part in some of the things that we think about. The first thing I'll give you up on the screen there is it's a hospitality axiom, which is a truth. A person with a great attitude will always give you great service. A person with a poor attitude will always deliver poor service. Nothing true rocket science maybe about that. But the thing that was interesting is that every day at the Ritz-Carlton, we'd talk about that. It would kind of sit up on the wall. We'd always be talking about that the key to great customer service is the attitude of the people delivering it. Now, I understand, like many of you, that customer service and customer experience are two different things. Customer service is really about the interaction, while customer experience is about a journey. And so you have many interactions in that journey. And whenever a guest or a customer touches one of your employees in those moments within the journey, whether it's call center, whether it's welcome, whether it's sales, all of those things to keep in mind, you've got to understand that the attitude of the person they interact with them really does define significantly in terms of how well they see or feel the overall service or customer experience is. Now, this was clarified a few years ago. We did some research and got to have a look at some stuff with TripAdvisor. Obviously, it said the online community that rates hotels, restaurants, a lot of different things. What was interesting is they recognized that about 72% of all their comments and feedback was based around the idea of a person or attitude. And so you're seeing that that's really reinforcing the idea that as managers and leaders in customer experience, we always must be thinking about how the attitude of our people is. Now, where this sort of led us to is the idea of culture. There's a lot of definitions of culture out there, but the one that I always refer back to and the one that we've really sort of wrapped our arms around is the idea of a collective mindset and attitude. So whereas in the previous side I said, hey, always be interested in about the attitude of your people, but culture is the collective. And what we've sort of come to understand is that the collectively, how does your group feel about what they do and who they do it for? And this is very important. The word collective is probably the most important part of it. Meaning that when you have your team performing each and every day, as a manager, you're always thinking about how are they collectively feeling? This doesn't mean that there might be one person not feeling good for that day. And I think we've got to be careful that we don't overreact to someone having a bad day. What you want to understand, if someone's having a bad day every day, obviously we've got a bigger problem. But overall, as a manager, you should have a good pulse of your team and go collectively, people feel good. Now, one of the things I think with the virus and a lot of things going on in the world is that we've got a lot of people who aren't feeling good. And so a lot of culture has been affected right now. Collectively, people in the group are nervous, are a little bit more worried. So as managers, what you specifically need to think about is what can you do to get that collective mindset back on track? And this is where we'll start to get into some of the leadership elements of really what makes a difference. But if you can start with that really the attitude of your employees plays a huge part in service and experience, and culture is the collective team, and that as a manager, always think about how is my team feeling today? Now, culture then manifests itself in employee behavior. I think the piece that I find most interesting is that those behaviors now define the reputation of the company, because a lot of what our customers are talking about is online. They're going online, talking to friends, family, communities about how their experience was. So it's very important to understand that you know, your reputation as a brand and a business is probably impacted more by what people are saying about you online than any advertising that you're doing out there. And so this whole idea that how people's attitudes are impacting your company is quite significant, because they really are having a large part in defining your reputation and even your brand. So culture certainly is important. Blake Morgan, one of my friends over at Forbes, I think she said it really well. Your customer experience tells you everything you need to know about what's under the hood. When a customer interacts with you, the attitude and their experience and how you make them feel is a direct correlation to your culture. What's under the hood is your culture. It's your employee experience. So keep that in mind. People often talk to me and say, well, how do we measure our culture? One of the most important and I think significant ways is measure your customer experience. How satisfied are your customers? I would argue that the companies that take care of their customers the best also have the best service cultures. They also take care of their employees the best, because they understand that employee experience is a key driver in this idea of customer experience. So always ask yourself what's under the hood. And this is why I ended up writing this book, because I just felt I'm not an HR person. I'm an operator. I come from the operations side, entrepreneurial. And what I saw out there a lot was this idea that we really weren't understanding how customer experience and employee experience were connected together. And so we really sort of started to dig deep into the different mechanisms that often our HR teams are responsible for. But as I would sort of say to anybody, HR culture is really not an HR thing, it's a business thing. And I think every manager has to play a part in that. And what we want to understand is that the culture is defined by a variety of mechanisms, activities, and processes and managers that influence how an employee feels each and every day. And so part of what we want to be able to do is understand all those different mechanisms and process. And that's what we sort of came up to with Culture Hacker. And here are the sort of 10 sort of big ones that kind of sat out there. How companies' purpose and values, how they utilize them. The recruitment process had a big impact. It's surprising that, again, if your recruitment process is getting warm bodies instead of the right people, what you're doing is you can dramatically impact negatively the morale of a team. Bringing the wrong person into that team can have significant repercussions. Orientation and onboarding was a big one. Again, we found many organizations were not welcoming and starting out their employee journey well. They'd throw them on the front lines. The first day was boring, full of rules and priorities. And what tended to happen is there's no emotional connection from employees. And as a result, if you look at some numbers like last year, 50% of all turnover last year occurred in the first 90 days of someone working. And that means and indicates that people are starting to get into jobs and realizing, listen, this is not for me, or this wasn't what I expected, or they don't really have my best interest in heart, and are going to make some changes. Empowerment. Do they get the training tools? Do they get the information to be able to do the job? And if a manager does that, then you got to empower them, which means back off, let them do what they need to do without micromanaging it. We found that was a huge part in making employees feel bad, is that they felt they had no control, that someone was always standing over them. And then nothing gets employees more frustrated when they don't have the tools, the information, or the training to do their job well. Feedback and coaching. What we found a lot of is that when it comes to feedback and coaching, the most times an employee got feedback or coaching was in the boss's office, and it was usually a negative thing. So again, that had a negative impact on how people would feel, versus really high-performing, particularly customer experience organizations, really understood that coaching and give feedback was a separate function to training, and that the coach was always giving feedback positively and negatively to make sure that people were always having a fair understanding of how they were performing. Recognition, as we know, plays a huge part in how people feel coming to work. And I think when we started to dig into this, what we found was that while managers are extremely good at saying thank you, and most managers think they say thank you a lot, what we started to understand is that a lot of employees don't always process that thank you or that says thank you all the time. In fact, some people process information auditorily, through observation, through writing, and kinesthetically. So you really have to start looking at recognition in different ways. Accountability played a big part. One of the biggest frustrations we found, particularly in younger people, was when you didn't hold poor performers accountable. So when someone doesn't give a damn about the business or what they do, and they're allowed to just go through their daily routine, it really had a big impact negatively on how a team felt about what they did. And it actually had a significant erosion over time when managers who may have been friends, worked with someone a long period of time, wasn't doing their job. And so holding people accountable is significantly one of the most important things that we saw within an organization in terms of one of those mechanisms that drive culture. Career development, again, very, very high on sort of our younger people. What was interesting is that a lot of organizations avoided the career development conversation because they didn't have a title or somewhere to promote people. So they felt if they didn't have anywhere to promote them, that they just wouldn't talk about it. What we found is that most people want that career conversation regularly. They understand if it's not available, but it's absolutely necessary that they feel that you have their career in mind. So really, as a manager and as an organization, both parties play a part in making someone feel good, that you certainly think about their longevity or long-term career. Communication was a big one. We spent a lot of time trying to understand the different conversations, and that I think the big aha that came out of this is that when someone gets a title, they suddenly think they're the world's greatest communicator. And again, while they might think that, their employees certainly don't. And one of the biggest mismatches and frustrations for employees was when a manager would get up, say something once, and just assume everyone knew what they were talking about. When we actually dug into this, we found that many times when a manager communicates, the employees actually aren't that clear on what they're meant to do next. And they actually spend a lot of time discussing, thinking, working this out, because the manager made that assumption. So really important in terms of communication. And then in the last few years, we've really seen the priorities and importance of our manager being able to communicate across multiple platforms. It's not just about being able to speak, being able to write a memo, it's being able to use video, different internal social media sites and all of that to communicate the same message, but over different tools and different mediums. So we found that to be a really important piece in terms of a leaders or managers skill kit. The other one there, we said product, place, process, and perks, my 5 Ps. The type of product certainly has an influence on how someone feels about what they do. But let's face it, some jobs are just not that much fun. Some products we represent are just not that cool. And so what we found is that while some products can really make people feel good about what they do, a bad product doesn't necessarily mean that they feel bad. What we found was there was more of a correlation to how the manager made people feel about what they did. Did they connect the dots that what someone does, regardless of the job, was actually important and had some worth to it? That was the real sort of key element there. Place, environment certainly plays a part. We've seen over the last 5-10 years, and certainly before the virus kind of struck, there was a lot of investment into the workplace, the environment in which people work. What is interesting is that still over the last 10 years, there was this wish that people could work more from home, and now all of a sudden it sort of happened. So research is starting to actually come out already that people's favorite place to work is actually at home. Now, obviously there's some variables that go into that, but we're certainly seeing some good productivity numbers coming out. Processes, this really refers to the processes of being able to work, their employment process. Is it easy to communicate? What are the processes that have been put in place to allow me to work every day? Do I feel that they are enabling me or hurting me? Are they difficult? And so always keep that in mind. Is it easy for someone to come to work every day and actually to do their job? Pay, we actually didn't touch much on this in the book because we went back and looked at all the research, and you know, there's such a mixed bag, but basically if you look at all research, it comes to the sort of conclusion that, hey, what happens is once you feel that you are competitively paid, it actually doesn't become a strong motivator in terms of how you feel about what you do and who you do it for. And I think the other piece that we're always concerned of is that a lot of organizations, particularly small companies, do not have an ability to pay people more. So again, we kind of put that to the side and recognize there's a lot of other things that can make people feel just as good. And then perks, what are the benefits for working at your organization? It's not just about the kegerator, the table tennis table. We're seeing now that the perks or benefits people are really talking about is tuition reimbursement, working from home, flex hours, a disconnect from technology. There's a lot of other elements that people are really starting to become more involved in terms of their wellness and their well-being, that certainly has an impact. So all of these elements play a part in what we're talking about, the customer journey, and it impacts how they feel on any given day. But we're not going to talk about these actually for this session. And as I said, I urge you in future sessions, we are going to touch on some of these in quite detail. But I wanted to touch on the 11th mechanism today, and that's the influence of the manager. And really, the reason I put this out there is it's probably the most significant influencer of how people feel about what they do and who they do it for. Boyatzis and Goleman in Primal Leadership, really a big part of the whole EQ movement, said it best. 70% of employees perceive the climate or culture of the organization to be traced to the actions of their immediate manager. And that's why when we do a lot of CX work and EX work, we actually end up focusing more on frontline managers and supervisors, the skills they have and the traits they have, than any other thing. And what we find most interesting is that this is where there is a huge lack of focus and development. While people at the top of the organization, executives generally have a pretty heavy investment into their development, what we see in a lot of organizations we work with is a neglect for frontline supervisors and managers. And we also see another thing is that people are not given any leadership development until they're actually given a title. And so when you think about that, we give them a title, expect them to be leaders, but we put them through 12 months of training after that. So think of all the damage that can happen in that 12 months. And so what we saw in a lot of really great organizations was that they were starting to develop leadership skills well before they had titles. And we thought this was a really important best practices that more companies need to think about, because they need to prepare. Most often, if you're doing a hire from within, you are placing someone into a management supervisor position because they're extremely good at a task. They've got experience and expertise in a thing. Often there is little consideration to how well they're going to interact with people. Now, management by definition is about this idea of organizing, planning, running your organization. But leadership by definition, which is much more people orientated, when we started to look at how and why people were promoted, the idea of how well they interact with people wasn't a strong indication in many organizations. So we thought this is very, very interesting and again, very important. Here we go, sort of what is management? Management and leadership are two sides of the same coin, which means you have to have management and leadership skills. And I want to say that you need both. Both are absolutely important, but there's such a strong emphasis on management in many organizations that as a result, the focus becomes less about people and everything else, and it becomes just get the job done, which does have a negative impact on people. So management about compliance, safety, consistency, efficiency, all very important. And we're not saying it's not, but what we have to say is you can't be 100% management focused and 0% leadership focus. Leadership is the manager's ability to inspire hearts and minds. And now let's connect that back to the idea of culture. Culture is the collective hearts and minds. What a leader does is they inspire those hearts and minds. Now, what do they inspire them to do? They inspire them to want to do things. From a customer service perspective, and again, Ritz-Carlton, the first thing you learn is that you can't make someone take care of a customer. They have to want to do it themselves. And so many organizations think they can make people be nice when it comes to customer service or customer experience. It's an anomaly. It's a myth. It just doesn't happen if they want to do it. And so what I think is interesting is that the definition of leadership's evolved over the years. It used to be leadership would be get people to do what you want them to do. And that used to give them a pretty wide range of how they would coerce and get people to do that. Now the definition of leadership is getting people to want to do what you want them to do. And you have to understand that the importance of want. When people want to do something, they will perform at a higher level. So leadership, which is again, two sides of the same coin, managers must understand how to develop people influence and be able to inspire hearts and minds to not only do things they may not want to do. And I'm going to tell you now, coronavirus, there's some people that don't want to come back to work. There's some people that are feeling really unsettled right now, which is why I think leadership is more important than anything else. But also that's how you get people to perform at their best. You can't make someone perform their best. You can't coerce them into it. You have to inspire. And so I want to just make sure that whole idea, leadership and management, they're both necessary. So we have to develop those skills. But again, I want to go back to what we found and what we see in so many organizations is that there is such an overemphasis on management that many of the leadership abilities and the leadership responsibilities are lacking. So keep that in mind. So what I want to focus on is that leadership. How and what do you do to inspire hearts and minds? And, at the end of the day, I think organizations have to recognize that they've got many managers with titles, but few leaders with the ability to inspire others. And that's what I always say, plenty of managers, plenty of titles, but few leaders. And that's a really important piece in terms of your customer experience. Ask yourself as the organization, well, how many leaders do we actually have? What I find interesting in some of our research is that we found more leadership with people without titles, people actually that were working on the front line than actually people with titles. Why? Because leadership is how to inspire hearts and minds. There will be some informal leaders, employees who are working alongside others that has tremendous influence. Might be a union worker, might be someone who's been there a while, it might be just the person who naturally exudes some leadership ability, but they don't have to have a title to be a leader. And so this was a really important sort of thing that we started to recognize is that, well, what are the things that these leaders do that were having such a huge impact in these various customer experience organizations? So I want to just talk about 5 things. These were the 5 key things that we saw time and time again that a manager possessed that gave them the sense or perception of leadership. Example, experience, effort, passion, and caring. And again, these are all things, they often say, well, a leader's born or are they made? I will tell you that they are made, but certain people certainly exude that. But as you listen to these 5 things, because we do a lot of surveying and that, these are the 5 things that employees kept talking about that really inspired them. And it said, I'm not sure whether it was just one or the other, but these collection of 5, when we found them, we saw true leaders, people that just had huge ability to inspire. So I wanted to kind of take you through these because I think it's really important to be able to recognize them. First one is setting the example. There's the old saying, do as I say, not as I do. The reality is that managers have to understand that the most watched sport in any country around the world is called boss watching. I have to remind managers about this all the time, but employees are always watching the behavior of the boss. And it's really important to understand that their actions and behaviors is a louder communication than anything else about priorities and things that should be done. When that manager lives by the values or sets a great example, that was the first thing that we found that really got people inspired or at least excited to do more. What we found is that managers who did not lose credibility so quickly, and it actually has a detrimental motivating effect on people where they say, and again, you may have heard it, well, if the manager doesn't do it or the boss doesn't do it, why should I? So the first thing that we talked about managers is make sure that you are leading by example. And we specifically focus in on values here. Values are, many organizations have them, which really define how people should act and interact. And so if you have got a value of respect, the most important thing that we asked was, does the manager display respect? And we found that, again, when the overall majority says, yes, they demonstrate respect, they had inspiration. But if a value of respect and the manager didn't respect them, it had a significantly negative impact on how people feel about coming to work. So I often talk with a lot of organizations and I say, listen, how much emphasis have you put on your managers that they must lead by example? And by the way, organizations, if you've got a manager that does not lead by example, you have a problem. And this is where we have to start thinking organizationally about, is this the right person? And again, I'll go back to it. They may be a great manager. They may get stuff done, highly efficient, highly organized. But quite honestly, they live in that world of, do what I say, but not what I do. That is one of the first things that will pull apart a team and certainly frustrate a group of employees when it comes to culture. The second thing we really focused on is experience. A manager who's able to do anything that they expect of their team, very important in terms of inspiration. And the thing that came up probably more recently is they're willing to share it. So if you've got a manager that has expertise or experience and goes out of their ways to share that with their employees, extremely motivating. What we saw on the other side of though is if you've got a manager that doesn't understand the to-dos, doesn't understand how to do all the intricacies of the job, and just kind of gets people to do things that they're not willing to do themselves, you're going to have a problem with your culture. We also heard from a lot of young people that managers that didn't share their expertise or experience lost credibility as well. And I think it's kind of interesting because you start to look at some managers, they, as they get older, they start to get fearful. They start to kind of get a little worried, will I have a job? And so what they do is they protect their expertise and experience, and they might use it as a sort of a position of power. Well, I've been here longer, I have the expertise, you can't get rid of me. So they don't share their expertise and experience. They kind of keep it to themselves. That way they think that they're keeping themselves in a job. I would argue that in today's world, the most indispensable manager is the one that makes them dispensable, which means shares their expertise and experience with their team. And in some ways, what they do is they do take themselves out of a job, but they put themselves in a position to take a job higher up in the organization. So this was a really important piece to think about how and which managers are really good at sharing their expertise and experience, and think about how that's inspiring the team around them. Effort. I think this is kind of it. And I would say that in our research, this was the thing that employees recognize the most in their managers. A lot of managers are pretty hard workers. And so what we found that was really important is that you know, there was an overall feeling from employees that, hey, my manager certainly works hard. What we started to see more though was whether or not my manager is smart. And what we mean by this is the old adage is, well, my manager is first here in the morning and last to leave at night. Man, they're the hardest workers in the building. But the reality is they sit in their office all day and you know, they do a bunch of nothing, and they start to erode their ability and energy over a period of time. And also we found that managers who are there, you know, Monday through Friday, but don't turn up on a Saturday morning when the business is going crazy, also loses that edge to be able to inspire. So employees are really quick to notice that if their manager puts in energy and effort, but they really notice whether or not the manager is there when they need them the most. So I always look at this, you know, some managers go, well, it's a 9-to-5 job, yet their business gets really busy. The call center gets busy at 7 o'clock at night. Their shopping or retail center gets busy on Saturdays and the weekend. Their hotel is crazy on Friday nights when they're already gone. All of these things come to play. So one of the things that employees talked a lot about was my manager was there when I needed them. So when shit happens, they were there. But what they did is the manager was able to kind of get out of it as well. They did stay in the operation. So effort was a big one. Passion. Employees are really quick to tell whether or not a manager loves what they do. And I want to say that's a really important thing to consider, because we've seen a lot of managers get burnt out. And just because they work hard, there's a lot of things that happen. Recession, here we go again. We got the coronavirus. A lot of things go on that burn people out. When managers lose their love of what they do, it becomes really hard for them to inspire their people. And so organizationally, we often talk about this, is there's so much focus in an organization on the employees that you really have to put a lot of focus on the well-being and the passion of the frontline managers. If they get burned out, it is a really negative follow-on experience for the frontline employees and the customer experience in general. So pay attention to that. Do people still love what they do? And listen, people can still have bad days. That's because I have a bad day. It doesn't mean I don't love what I do. But I think it's important that we recognize that we have a temperature check of our managers to ensure that love. Now, that love might not be just for the job. The love might be, I love being around people. I love coaching my people. I love, elevating my people. That's what they get out of it. So don't think it's, oh, I love taking care of window blind treatments, or I love taking care of tires. This is the greatest thing in the world. It's, no, I love what I do and my ability to have an impact. So check that passion point out. Managers, there's an often assumption that because you're a manager, you're built to last, and it's not true. So wellness and management has to become, I think, a bigger topic and a greater focus for many organizations. And then the final one is how much you care. Employees don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This was hands down the most important one that employees talked about in terms of inspiration. When a manager does not care about their employees, it stands out. It's highly noticeable. The employees notice. And I'm going to tell you now that when managers stop caring, we have a problem, because their ability to inspire hearts and minds certainly disappears. And this is why I think caring is probably one of the most important focus, because again, this is something that people do have innately. They care more. However, you can learn certain skills and certain habits that drives the perception of care. Checking in on the employees, showing an interest outside of work, being available and approachable, respecting people. There's a lot of things that come into this. And I want to sort of say that when managers stop caring about their employees and they only care about the business or getting stuff done, there is a huge negative impact on company culture. So I kind of go, those 5 things really come into play. But when we talk, and again, we do a lot of customer experience strategies. What we say is one of the most important strategies is to think about how much as an organization you're focusing on your managers and their leadership responsibilities. We know there's going to be a focus on their management responsibilities because that's how work gets done. But their focus and comfort in inspiring other people is an absolute critical part of great customer experience and great customer service. And so I think, as I sort of said, is we continue to evolve our thinking, but those 5 elements really have stood out with us now for the last 5 years. And as a result, when managers make people their first priority, what happens is that then their people will make the customers their first priority. And so I often talk about that a manager's main responsibility is not their customers, but their people. And I think that whether you call it the service profit chain, whether you think about this quote here from Howard Schultz, but the thing that I really want to get across to people is that the best advice you can give that young manager or that first-time manager, and it's the advice I got at the Ritz-Carlton on the 2nd day that I was promoted to a supervisor. The general manager came to me and says, I want you to understand this. You are really good with customers and guests, but they are no longer your number 1 priority. And I looked at them kind of like, well, what the hell is? But I thought that's why you promoted me. It is the reason they promoted me. But once you get that title, the priority shifts, and he says, now your number 1 priority is your team. You cannot touch all 500 guests that are coming through this hotel every day, but your team can. And that's something that's always stuck with me when it comes to customer service or customer experience. As a manager, as a leader, you can't touch everybody. You're not going to be able to be there 24/7. You're not going to be able to do it all, be it all. But if you focus on your people and set them up for success and really focus around this idea of culture, you will find that you can be most successful. And this is where I sort of come back that when it comes to customer experience, I'll just let you know that the most dangerous person in your business is the manager who gets results at the expense of their employees. And just remember that, you know, they will get the results over, above, through, around. And that's very dangerous because it's a very short-term approach to the business. They not only burn their employees out, which has a cost of turnover and retraining, but there's certainly a cost to the fact that you haven't got your best people constantly engaging with your customers. So keep that in mind. And this is where I sort of go back and I repeat this, is that we get invited all the time to help organizations with their customer experience strategy. And I will tell you that at least 80% of the time, one of the most important strategic initiatives that we initiate and focus on is the fact that they have to get their frontline managers and supervisors better equipped to inspire the hearts and minds of your people. So just remember, EX defines CX. That is something that, again, I promoted and I talk about a lot. Just remember that leadership is the number 1 thing that drives a great employee experience. It truly does define what people do and how they feel about what they do each and every day. So I wanted to kind of just take you through that, hopefully get you thinking a little bit. But I want to open it up for questions now. Your thoughts. I like to see some of the chats coming through that people are starting to kind of think. But you know, what do you think? What are you doing to make leadership that priority? And again, I want to differentiate leadership over management. But maybe let's share some of the things. I've shared with you some of the things that our research and our experience has given to us, but I'd love for you to share some of these, and maybe Abraham, we can go sort of down the list through people, but let's hear from you. What do you do to make, and again, it's what your organization's doing to ensure that you've got people that can inspire hearts and minds. So put it out to the world. Charles, you're front and center in front of me right now, so I'm going to start with you. You've always got some good ideas. What do you think? What is your organization doing to ensure that as you as a manager or your peers as managers are really focused on the people?
So that's one of the things that I believe this organization does well and takes very seriously. When we're out looking for talent, probably more so than the direct experience or that type of thing, I'm looking for the person that fits the team and fits into the culture. So we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we find the right individuals that are going to come in here and fit into the team as quickly as possible and become productive. Because you can hire a guy with a lot of experience, but it doesn't mean he's going to get things done in a quick manner or fit into your organization.
And that goes another step, because I challenge organizations about how much they think about leadership qualities when they're hiring that manager. And I think that's a big piece of what we found, is that it's just not that they're so focused on their experience and what they've done and how they've managed things that they really don't focus on, well, tell me how you lead people, how you inspire them. What are the things that you do? Because again, that for me is the most important questions, or that needs to be there. Yet when we survey different recruitment strategies, the questions for management hires, again, are less focused on leadership, much more focused on the management style. So organizations really need to think about what is the process for getting or appointing leaders or hiring leaders, managers into an organization. Who else would like to kind of go out there? Anne, I heard you talking earlier, so I know you can connect in there. Share with us some thoughts about organizationally, what is your group company doing that, again, helps create leaders as much as managers? So Anne, what do you think? You still there with us? I know you're on mute right now.
Okay, sorry about that. No, I am here. Right, okay, slightly off topic. One of the things that you said really did resonate with me, and therefore I'd like to share it. And that is simply the fact that I cannot personally look after 2,000 passengers on a cruise ship, and I am heavily dependent on my team, on the front desk, on reception to do that for me. They are incredibly possessive of the guests who come to them with a query. And if the guest in a very stroppy mood, and again, I'll go back to your initial comment, which was on great attitude. It is also, I'd like to point out, the attitude of the customer when they approach the call center or the reception desk, because that makes a massive difference in how that person responds in the first place. So that's point number one. But secondly, if a guest comes up to the desk and automatically asks for the customer services manager, immediately they're worried. Why does that customer want to see the customer services manager? They want to take ownership for the issue that the guest is presenting. 9 times out of 10, they do just that. Just for you, I don't know if any of you have looked up my profile on LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to do so. I am heading towards retirement in a couple of years' time. So yes, I am mentoring, training, and coaching my youngsters to take over from me. I don't have a problem with that. I don't see it as a threat at all. And I'm happy to train them up in the way that I have had 40 years of experience under my belt. The other important thing, and this perhaps doesn't apply to many of you who are signed in and listening, working on a ship, we are together as a group 24/7, no days off, very little time off during a day for a period of either 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, or 9 months. Now that is intense, and we do become a second family. So yes, sharing of experiences, stories, examples we give out all the time. And yeah, I'm happy to admit I'm a bit of a mother hen. I do mentor. Okay, but very sorry, I've forgotten what your question was.
No,
now.
I think there's a couple of things out of that. One, mentoring is absolutely a best practice in organizations that are focused on developing leaders. I think the other piece that you said there is very important. We've seen this a lot, is that managers like to be the knight in shining armor. And what we mean is, like, they love to swoop in and solve the customer's problems. And it's very frustrating and debilitating for customer service employees when that happens. So the fact that you're talking about organizationally and as a manager, you empower your people, which you give them confidence that they can make decisions, because as you said, 9 times out of 10, they can handle it, is really an important way that you can organizationally build leadership, because leadership is about ultimately being able to make some better decisions. So one of the very earliest ways that you can sort of start to build that is by letting your people make decisions. And again, it might not be perfect, but that confidence they get when knowing that they can handle something is just invaluable. And as you said, there's always those guests that have a crappy attitude and are just kind of working the system. Listen, you're there to step in at that point, but really important that you're able to kind of give your people that confidence. And at Ritz-Carlton, whenever a customer would come up and say, hey, I want to speak to the manager, we always had a system that if they said it to me, that my coworker would suddenly become the manager, or vice versa. So it really wasn't about the title. It was like, oh, well, Shane here, well, he's the manager of the night. He'll be able to take care of you. And again, people just wanted to feel that they were getting to the right person, but it was really just an employee with no title at all. So I think there's a lot of cool points in that end. So again, certainly how the approach that you take as a manager, but more organizationally as well. So thanks for sharing. Who else has got it? Moshe, I see you sitting there. Give us some words of wisdom. Come off your mute there.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. The first thing that jumped out at me was soft skills versus hard skills.
Yeah.
Basically, we're not looking for leadership qualities because it's hard to quantify. You talked about effort, you talked about caring, and it's very hard for us to know how to measure these. So I think we need to put more of an effort on that. We're focusing more on the managerial skills because we've been focusing more on efficiency rather than effectiveness.
What I think is most interesting, though, is if you survey your employees on those 5 attributes, you will get your employees have no doubt who puts effort in, who loves what they do, who sets an example, who shares their experience, and who cares for them. So that measurement is in there. It's amazing how many organizations aren't asking those 5 questions, because your employees absolutely will tell you if a manager has that or not. So that's a big piece, but I think companies are so more focused on the KPIs of how, what they deliver rather than how people feel. So it's a really important point there.
But that's a product of our educational system more than anything else. 30 years ago, I would get my employees together once a week and ask them, what is causing you problems to do your job? What policy, what procedure is getting in your way? And it was my job to take care of it.
Yep.
And
it's funny what you've decided there. A couple of companies we work for call it the weekly performance conversation. There's a daily operations conversation, which is, hey, what do you need to do your job? But on a weekly basis, they sit for 10 minutes with their employees and say, what do you need from me to get better at what you do? And it might be information, might be training, might be tools, but it's a really important best practice that you're defining there that we see in organizations that are willing to have and ask those questions.
Now kick it up a notch. What are your supervisors telling their managers? All right.
Many times they're not.
What support am I getting as a supervisor? What support am I getting from a mid-level manager? And that's where the problem is. I mean, you talk about top down. Top down is great, except you have this zone of nothing, a black hole in the middle of your organization. The message doesn't go down and the message doesn't go up. And that's why the employees are totally clueless.
But I think that highlights that we often fail that supervisor group with some skills of that. And listen, I was brought into United Airlines after they pulled the guy off the plane 2 years ago. And what we found was that the supervisors were frozen. 3,500 supervisors in the airline had not have any leadership development. And so they were always frozen in the moment, caught between the rock and the hard place. And so I think it's very important that we've identified that as a key skill, how to communicate up for those managers, help those supervisors, because there is a missing piece to this. So listen, all of these things are organizationally driven, and it's where the priorities are. And that's why I kind of go back that, some organizations are doing an outstanding job with leadership development. And as a result, you're seeing that impact on the customer experience side.
At least, Shane, United doesn't write guitars anymore.
Yes, there we go. See, I always say it's progress. Ruth, you've already got something to say. What have you got out there for us?
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Ruth.
Hi.
I'm saying hi because here it's at night here in Dar es Salaam. I know you guys mid-afternoon or something. Someone somewhere, UK, 7 p.m. Here it's 9. It's around going to 10. So I'll agree with Anne on the mentorship, because I worked for a really large organization and we made the mistake that Shane mentioned earlier about promoting and then training them on leadership later. So mentorship came to correct a bit of that, along with other targeted trainings, especially on coaching and counseling. My question to you, Shane, tonight is, having worked in an organization that's regional in nature, basically we're 5-6 countries. We have one main organizational culture, but because of the differences in the cultures of the countries where we operate in, you find subcultures forming here and there. For instance, my work experience in Kenya is very different with my work experience in Tanzania. How I worked with my team in Kenya, I had to sort of like shift how I do that when I came to Tanzania. So what advice would you have for us for managing subcultures, knowing that we cannot eliminate them, but to ensure that they are always aligned, that they do not detract from the goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just go back to the definition of culture. It's the collective hearts and minds. So the collective hearts and minds in organizations are always going to be different. You can have different teams within an organization and their hearts and minds might be different. So what you're talking about is, again, the same thing. What you have to understand as a manager is how to inspire their hearts and minds. There will be differences. When we do our culture hacker assessment and we get people to rate each of the mechanisms in terms of importance and in terms of satisfaction, what's interesting is that depending on companies, countries, where we do all of this, it's always different. So you're seeing different priorities. The key, which we always talk about, is that organizations must understand what's most important to their employees. Sometimes it'll be recognition's more important than selection. Accountability is more important than perks. Again, there's always sort of these differences. We found those 11 to be the 20 that gets to the 80, as it were. But there's always going to be those differences. What we know is that the manager's responsibility, and again, it goes into leadership, is that I understand the group of people that I am with. I remember, again, many years ago when I first became a housekeeping manager at a large hotel where I had 500 employees. Now, I was the manager from the front of the house. It was easy for me. Everyone spoke English. It was all just a very different. I go to housekeeping, 500 employees. 3/4 did not speak English as a first language or even didn't speak it. And I came down with my front of the house, middle or young white guy kind of mentality. And I completely failed in the first 2 or 3 weeks, meaning 3 weeks in, I had most of my staff ready to walk off the job. And the number one reason wasn't that I was doing anything overtly wrong, but they said, and it's the most valuable lesson I have, they said, in those 3 weeks, you never sat down with anyone and got to know us to understand what was important to us. I came down assuming, well, we lived in the same hotel, we worked, I've been doing so well in the front of the house, now I'm going to go to housekeeping and do exactly the same things. And I failed. And it was probably one of the best lessons I've ever learned. So again, those differences will always exist, but that's when I go back to, if a manager cares, they'll take the time to sit down and learn and really ask questions and find out what those priorities are. They'll find out when they're needed most. They'll find out what example and what things they need to be best at. They find out who they need to develop and share information with. So I think it's really important to kind of keep that in mind, that all these little subcultures absolutely are different, but a manager who has these leadership things that it's my job to inspire the hearts and minds of my people, that group of people, how you inspire their hearts and minds is extremely different. Again, my front of the house guys were all about tips. My housekeeping team was all about the potluck lunch once a month where they got to come and celebrate and share the food from their different cultures. So keep that in mind, that you can certainly do it, but it's up to you to show that interest and know that what's important to you or how you think is not how your team thinks as well. So great question, Ruth. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, Shane, we have some comments over here you might want to get to.
Yeah, so I wanted to check in on Kelly and Jen. I know we got HR and ops in the same phone line over there. So Kelly and Jen, I'll let you speak. But again, give us some ideas of what you're doing organizationally.
Hey, thank you. This is an interesting webinar for us for sure. It really resonates with I would say the personal connection and whether we're making enough of a personal connection with all of our staff while you're also trying to get all the other things done. So kind of taking a look at that and reevaluating, are you prioritizing your staff enough so that they feel really taken care of? And then you can enable them to maybe take on some of those, things that you do and empowering them.
That's a really great point. And I'm not sure if it's Jen or Kelly that made it, but it was a great point that delegation and giving employees that don't have titles, those managerial tasks. Here's the thing, the employees love it because they think they're getting developed. I always remember scheduling. Managers would always control and put the schedule together. I can remember the day that I trained someone, an employee, it was actually my overnight sort of front desk agent, to suddenly do the schedule. First of all, it freed up a ton of time for me. But second of all, the amount of attention to detail that they put into that was more than I ever did. I'm trying to do 100 things. They have that one task. So being able to delegate managerial things and having that organizationally as part of how you develop, but how you're sort of free up some time to lead, I think it's a really good piece of advice. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else that you guys do that think is another way for us to be better leaders or to lead within your organization?
Okay.
So that was Kelly that had the last comment.
Thanks, Kelly.
One thing that I noticed early on that our company does is we're very family oriented. And I feel like management really makes an effort to know who you are outside of work and what you value outside of work to help align with goals for you inside of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I go through this, what we've gone through with the virus. I always say the two most important questions that you need to ask an employee is, what are the things that they're most grateful for, and what are the things what is their personal and professional goal for the year? So you start to understand the priorities that they have in life. I think the question that you add in that it's been borne home to us is that through these last 3 or 4 months, the number one question we have to be asking our employees is, how are you doing? And not making the assumption just because they're turning up to work that they're doing okay. So a really important point is, demonstrating that care, but asking really good questions of your staff demonstrates the care, demonstrates the focus on them. I think it's a really important sort of lesson and habit that managers need to remember. We've got about 5 more minutes. So I want to open up if anyone else there. We've got Esther, Grace, anyone else out there that's got some ideas about what their organization is doing to help bring leadership out, to make that a priority as much as management. Anyone got some thoughts?
I have a few comments here, Shane. You want to get into those?
I'm looking at the chat. What comments do you want to go into?
We got just a few people made some points here. I'll read them to you here. I have from Mel. Mel said, be accountable for tasks, not responsible for getting them done. The team can be responsible for getting the task done, but the leader cannot get bogged down by tasks, so they have time to avail for their employees. So that's from
Mel. You want to come online and give us a little insight into that?
Hi.
Hey, Mel.
Hey. So what I've found is that if I actually try not to have any responsibilities in terms of tasks for myself, and some days I might not plan to do actually any tasks, then I can make sure that I'm available to support my team and lead my team and help them whenever they need. If I'm constantly working through tasks or things that have to get done, I can't quickly pivot and be available and support them in the way that they needed to be supported. I'm still accountable that all the work gets done, but they actually physically do all the work.
Really great point. I would argue one of the most important skills to teach young managers particularly is time management. Because again, they get so caught up in their tasks. It's how do you balance that? How do they understand their priorities? How do they use their time so they don't lose it to, crisis managing every 2 seconds? So I think it's really important to understand, how do you free up time so that you can become available? And even more importantly, how do you free up time at the right moment? So that you're there when you need to be there, or there when you have an opportunity to coach, give feedback, etc. So, Mel, that's a really cool point. So thank you for sharing that. What else do we got there? Again, Esther or Grace, any of you have a sort of a comment or thought for us about leadership and what your organization is doing? Joanne, Brandy, Julian, anything there, guys, before we wrap up? I'm interested to hear any of your thoughts and ideas. All right, well, listen, everybody, hopefully we've provided some stimulation today, got you thinking about what I think is the most important part of your customer experience strategy and your employee experience strategy, which is your managers and their ability to lead. As I sort of said, we've done this for a few years now, and I can tell you that it gets reiterated time and time again that an investment in those leadership skills, Moshe, I think, called them the soft skills, is probably one of the most important focuses for an organization. And if you're committed to a great customer experience and great customer service in the moment, just remember, it always comes back to your employee's attitude. The collective attitude of a group of people is your culture, and that leadership has that ability to inspire a culture or an individual to really do great things, be at their best, and maybe do things they don't always want to do. So again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, it's always fun to be able to hang out, share, collect a few thoughts, and again, reach out to us if you've got any questions or sort of want to talk more about it. This is what we do. So we love what we do. So we love talking about it. So thank you, Abraham, for getting me on as always. And thank you, everyone, for taking some time to join.
It's my pleasure. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, Shane, is Dana sent me over a preview of what you got coming up. Do you mind if I share that? I don't have it in a formal setting, but I can show them so people can see that this is just the beginning of something big here. So with your permission, can I show that?
Sure, I mean, yeah,
okay.
I know we got some ideas for some future.
Yeah, I got some amazing stuff. And I'd like to also ask permission from the people here. Would that be okay? Can I show you what's coming up right now, or do you need to leave? Just go ahead and put in the chat there that I can go ahead and show this stuff, because I don't want to. I know it's been a little while here, and I don't want to hold you up there. Okay? And Julian says, "Sure." That okay to you, Charles? Show you some stuff. Okay, I got a nod on that one. Ruth, that okay? Okay, good. Show the stuff. I like that. Great. Okay. So here I want to show you a few things. I'm going to give you a sneak preview of a few things here that we have coming up. So here we go.
Let's see what you got.
All right, here we go. So here we have, this was just sent over, this is hot off the press here. So we have you know, the CHY leadership and culture key to the great customer experience. We have why values are these are going to all be webinars here. Why values are key organizational performances. You see, we have why your recruitment. We're talking about recruitment here. You can just see, so this is what we have. I don't want to start reading the whole thing off. I just kind of want to show you that this is just the beginning of something. And I also want to show you something else that I'm working on right now here, that we're going to be having a free Culture Hacker Breakthrough Strategy Pack for all those qualified applicants. And I'm just building, I just wanted to get something out to kind of show you, that Shane is going to be delivering. He has over $3,000 of value. So he's just going to be giving away to people who are serious about wanting to make changes. And he's going to have all this stuff. I don't want to read this whole thing off for you because it's a lot of stuff here, but it's worth over 3,000. Oh, wait a minute. Am I even sharing my screen? I'm not even sharing my screen. I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, so
it was looking great.
All right, here, let me share that. Let me take control of this TV set. All right, there we go. All right, it's outer limits here, right? Okay, I was truly in the outer limits, right? Okay, so let me just show you this here. Here's the sheet I was talking to you about. Look at all this. I mean, this is what's coming up, guys. So, come back to us. You see what we're all about. We're not here, just trying to sell you something. We're trying to give you as much value as we possibly can. And then here is what I was talking about, this breakthrough session that Shane is going to be offering out to people who are serious about making some changes. He has a breakthrough session here that comes with a strategy pack with all this stuff here, which is over $3,000 value here, and he's giving it away for free. So you're just seeing this is kind of an ugly page. I'm building it out right now, and you'll be able to see that. So if anyone's interested in kind of getting a jump start on any of that stuff, just go ahead and reach out to us, and we'll make sure that you guys get that. So no problem with that. You know how to find me, right? You guys are on my list here, and you don't have to do anything. That's the beauty of what we're doing here. I have your email. You see how when I send to you, you just have to click a link and then you're automatically subscribed. So you've already into what I call into our network, our hub. So there's not much for you to do other than just click the links when I send stuff out to you. If you have any suggestions or anything you want, or if you'd like to to start a discussion yourself about something, let me know. That's what we're here for. For example, I was just reaching out to Ruth, and because I heard from Ann had some experience, and I said, hey, here is a great opportunity for these two people to connect. So this is what we're doing here. It's an opportunity to network as well. And obviously, we have Shane here that's leading the way. So there you go. Has Shane inspired your hearts and minds? Let's hear it. Yeah, all right. We got Charles. He's got it. All right, there we got Ruth. There we go. All right. So here, you saw earlier I put CEO. I think you saw that, right? Right. That's what I call the Chief Example Officer, right? That's what it really means. And you can find chief examples like what Shane's talking about. That could be the janitor, right? It's whoever is out there doing the job that's inspiring the hearts and mind. That's the CEO. Okay, there you go. So I always say, you ever that slogan that says it takes one to know one. You've heard that one? Usually kids, they insult each other with that one. So I just said, be the one you want to know. If it takes one to know one, then you be the one you want to know, right? So inspire yourself to be the CEO, the Chief Example Officer, right, in your company, and you don't need to be at the top. You just need to be you. So that's it. So thank you very much, Shane. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And we'll see you.
Yeah, thanks. Great session. Appreciate your time, guys.
Pleasure. Appreciate yours as well. Okay.
All right.
Have a good one.
We'll talk next time.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Bye-bye.